Most people go through life without ever questioning the way they think. They assume that their thoughts, their beliefs, and their reactions are just who they are. But what if I told you that your mind is not set in stone? That the way you think, the way you see yourself, and the way you experience life is nothing more than a pattern, one that can be rewritten in an instant. Think about it. Your mind is like a supercomputer. It takes in data, processes it, and produces an output. Your actions, your emotions, your identity. But here's the problem. Most people are running on outdated software. They've been programmed by past experiences, by other people's opinions, by cultural conditioning, and without realizing it, they're operating on a script that they never chose. Maybe as a kid you heard someone say, "You're not good at that," and now as an adult you unconsciously sabotage yourself in that area. Maybe you failed once, and instead of seeing it as a lesson, you internalize it as proof that you'll never succeed. These patterns, these limiting beliefs become truth in your mind, and they dictate the results you get in life. But let's get one thing straight. A belief is nothing more than a thought you've told yourself over and over again until it became automatic. That's it. And the moment you understand that, you realize something powerful. If a belief is just a thought, reinforced by repetition, then it can be changed just as easily. The key is to disrupt the pattern, to break the cycle in real time and replace it with something that empowers you. Let me give you an example. Imagine someone who always says, "I'm just not a confident person." Every time they walk into a room, they shrink themselves. They avoid eye contact, their body slouches. And because their body is reinforcing their belief, their mind finds more evidence to prove it true. It's a loop. But what happens if, in the middle of that moment, they suddenly catch themselves and say, "Wait a second, this is just an old script. This isn't who I am." And then they change their posture, they breathe deeper, they force themselves to look people in the eye and take up space. In that moment, they've interrupted the pattern, they've started rewriting the program. And here's what's fascinating. Your brain doesn't know the difference between something real and something vividly imagined. Neuroscientists have proven this over and over again. So if you start acting differently, if you start embodying confidence, even before you feel confident, your brain has no choice but to adapt. Your physiology changes, your emotions shift, and suddenly what once felt impossible now feels natural. This is how people transform. Not by waiting for some perfect moment, not by hoping one day they'll wake up feeling different, but by recognizing that they are in control of the process. That the mind follows the body and the body follows the mind. That in any given moment, they can make a conscious decision to break free from the past and step into a new way of being. Because here's the truth. You are not your thoughts. You are not your past. You are the one choosing what to believe, what to focus on, and how to show up in the world. And the moment you take ownership of that, you take back control of your life. Most people don't realize how much their emotional and mental state dictates their entire reality. They think their thoughts create their emotions, but it's actually the other way around. Your state, your physical and emotional condition in any given moment determines what you focus on, how you interpret the world and the actions you take. And the fastest way to reprogram your mind isn't through willpower or positive thinking. It's through shifting your state first. Think about it. Have you ever had a moment where you were completely exhausted and suddenly everything in your life seemed overwhelming? Problems felt bigger, opportunities felt smaller, and even simple tasks felt impossible. But then, in a different moment, maybe after a great workout, a deep conversation, or an exciting experience, those same problems didn't seem like problems anymore. Why? Because your state changed. The external world didn't shift. You did. Most people live at the mercy of their emotions. They wake up in the morning and let their mood dictate their day. If they feel tired, they act tired. If they feel unmotivated, they reinforce it by moving slowly, speaking softly, and focusing on what's wrong. They wait for something external to change before they feel better. But here's the secret. You don't need permission to feel incredible. You can change your state instantly. The fastest way to do this is through your physiology, your body. The way you move, breathe, and carry yourself sends a direct signal to your brain about how you should feel. If you stand tall, breathe deeply, and move with power, your brain registers that you're in a peak state. If you slump your shoulders, take shallow breaths, and hesitate in your movements, your brain interprets that as stress, fear, or doubt. Your emotions don't happen in a vacuum. They are physical. Anxiety has a posture. Confidence has a posture. Depression has a rhythm. Excitement has a rhythm. The key is to interrupt the habitual patterns that keep you stuck and replace them with patterns that propel you forward. Try this right now. If you're sitting down, stand up. Shake out your body. Take the deepest breath you've taken all day. Stretch your arms over your head. Expand your chest and smile, even if you don't feel like it. Hold that for just a few seconds. Now notice, does your energy feel different? Does your mind feel sharper? That shift just happened in an instant because you changed your state. This is how peak performers operate. They don't wait to feel motivated to take action. They create the conditions that generate motivation. Athletes, leaders, and high achievers all understand that their body is the key to their mindset. They use movement, breath, and posture to step into a state of certainty and power before they need it. And if you think this is just a temporary trick, consider this. Every time you shift your state, you are rewiring your nervous system. The more you train yourself to access high energy empowered states, the more natural they become. Over time, what once required conscious effort becomes your default mode of being. The truth is, your state is the foundation of everything. Change your state, and you change the way you think. Change the way you think, and you change the actions you take. Change your actions, and you change your life. And the best part, you don't have to wait to feel different. You can choose to shift in this very moment. If you want to change your mind, change the words you use. Language is not just a tool for communication. It's the coding system of your brain. Every word you speak, whether out loud or silently to yourself, reinforces a mental framework. And the scary part, most people are completely unaware of how their language is shaping their reality. Think about this. Have you ever heard someone say, "I'm terrible with names"? And then sure enough, they always forget names. Or someone who constantly says, "I can't catch a break," and their life seems like an endless cycle of setbacks. That's not a coincidence. That's programming. Words are like commands to your subconscious mind. When you repeat something enough times, your brain doesn't question it. It just follows the script. The problem is most people use language carelessly. They exaggerate their struggles. "I'm so overwhelmed. This is killing me. Nothing ever works out for me." These words seem harmless, but what they're actually doing is reinforcing an emotional state that keeps them stuck. When you say, "I'm exhausted," your brain goes, "Got it. Let's shut down your energy level." When you say, "I can't do this," your nervous system responds by killing your motivation. Your words are not just describing your reality, they're creating it. Now, I'm not talking about fake positivity. I'm not saying you should lie to yourself and pretend everything is amazing when it's not. What I'm talking about is conscious language, the ability to take control of the words you use and make sure they are serving you, not sabotaging you. For example, instead of saying, "I'm exhausted," what if you said, "I need to recharge"? One shuts you down, the other gives you a strategy. Instead of, "I'm stuck," what if you said, "I'm learning," or "I'm in the process of figuring this out"? Suddenly, your brain shifts from helplessness to action. Instead of, "I always mess things up," what if you said, "I'm improving every day"? Words shape identity, and identity is destiny. Let's take it a step further. If you really want to rewire your mind, don't just remove negative language, replace it with something empowering. The words you use should generate the emotional states you want to live in. Instead of saying, "I'm busy," say, "I'm productive." Instead of, "I have to do this," say, "I get to do this." The shift may seem subtle, but the impact is enormous. One frames life as a burden, the other as an opportunity. And when your brain sees life as an opportunity, you show up differently. This is what separates people who constantly struggle from those who thrive. They speak differently. They ask better questions. Instead of, why does this always happen to me? They ask, what can I learn from this? Instead of, what if I fail? They ask, how can I make this work? The quality of your life is determined by the quality of the questions you ask yourself. So here's the challenge. Start paying attention to your words. Catch yourself in those moments when you're reinforcing an old limiting belief and shift it. Speak in a way that moves you forward instead of holding you back. Because at the end of the day, your language isn't just describing your world, it's building it. Make sure you're building something extraordinary. Repetition is the mother of mastery. Your brain doesn't just learn by understanding something once, it learns by conditioning. Every belief you have, every habit you've built, every identity you hold has been wired into your nervous system through repetition. And if you want to reprogram your mind, you have to consciously repeat the new patterns you want to install until they become automatic. Think about this. When you first learned to drive a car, it was overwhelming. You had to think about every little movement, steering, checking mirrors, pressing the gas and the brake. But after enough repetition, it became second nature. You don't think about driving anymore, you just do it. That's how your brain operates. It takes repeated behaviors and turns them into unconscious patterns, so you don't have to waste energy thinking about them. The problem is most people have unconsciously trained their brain in ways that don't serve them. They've repeated the same negative self-talk for years, so it feels normal. They've reacted with fear or doubt so many times that their nervous system automatically triggers those emotions in certain situations. These patterns aren't true, they're just familiar. And the only way to replace them is through deliberate conditioning. This is where most people get it wrong. They hear an idea that inspires them, and for a moment they feel motivated, but motivation is fleeting. If you don't reinforce a new way of thinking every single day, your brain will default back to its old programming. That's why change doesn't happen through a single breakthrough. It happens through consistent action. You don't go to the gym once and expect to be in peak shape. You train, you repeat, and eventually it becomes who you are. So how do you condition your mind? 3 things. What you tell yourself, what you visualize, and what you do. First, your self-talk. We've already talked about the power of language, but it's not enough to change your words once. You have to hammer them into your brain every single day. Affirmations aren't just feel-good statements. They are commands to your nervous system. If you tell yourself every morning, I am confident, I am unstoppable, I create opportunities, and you say it with energy, your brain starts to believe it. But if you only say it once and then go back to your old thought patterns, nothing changes. Second, visualization. Your brain doesn't know the difference between a real experience and one vividly imagined. High performers, athletes, entrepreneurs, leaders condition their minds by rehearsing success in advance. Before they step into a challenge, they see themselves winning. They feel it. And when the real moment comes, their brain already knows how to respond. Third, action. Nothing rewires your mind faster than proof. When you take action, even in small ways, you show yourself that change is possible. If you want to be more confident, start practicing confidence now. Speak up, stand tall. If you want to be more disciplined, don't just think about it, act disciplined. Do something difficult on purpose. Each time you do, your brain updates its programming. This is who I am now. The truth is, you're always conditioning your mind, whether you realize it or not. The question is, are you conditioning it for power or for limitation? Because every thought you reinforce, every action you take is either strengthening an old pattern or building a new one. Choose wisely. Most people think change happens from the outside in. They believe that if they just get the right job, the right relationship, or the right opportunity, they'll finally feel different. But that's an illusion. Real transformation doesn't come from external circumstances. It comes from shifting your identity. Because here's the truth. You don't get what you want in life. You get what you believe you are. Every single one of us has an internal thermostat, a set identity that determines what we allow ourselves to achieve. If a person sees themselves as a 70-degree performer, that's where they'll stay. If life gets too good, if success starts rising beyond their self-defense, they'll find a way to cool things down, whether through procrastination, self-doubt, or bad decisions. And if life dips below their standard, they'll hustle to get back to their comfort zone. That's why some people, no matter how hard they try, always seem to stay stuck at the same level. It's not because they're incapable, it's because their identity won't allow them to rise beyond it. But here's the exciting part. Identity isn't fixed, it's just a story, a pattern of thoughts and emotions that you've reinforced over time. And the moment you decide to rewrite that story, everything changes. Think about someone who wants to get in shape. If their identity is, I'm not the kind of person who works out, no amount of motivation or strategy will create lasting change. They might go to the gym for a few weeks, but deep down, they don't believe it's who they are, so they'll eventually fall back into old habits. But if that same person shifts their identity to, I am an athlete, or I take care of my body, everything else aligns. Suddenly working out isn't a chore, it's just what they do. The same principle applies to every area of life. If you see yourself as someone who struggles financially, you'll always find a way to reinforce that. If you see yourself as someone who lacks confidence, no external success will change that self-perception. But if you start conditioning a new identity, if you tell yourself, I am a leader, I am a creator, I am relentless, and back it up with action, your entire world shifts to match it. This is how high achievers operate. They don't just set goals, they become the kind of person who naturally achieves those goals. They upgrade their self-image first, and the results follow. So ask yourself, what identity have you been living with? What labels have you unconsciously accepted that are keeping you where you are? And more importantly, who do you need to become to create the life you want? Because the moment you upgrade your identity, everything else falls into place. The world doesn't give you what you want, it reflects who you are. And if you want a different life, don't just change your actions, change the person taking the actions. Your environment is shaping you every single day, whether you realize it or not. The people you surround yourself with, the information you consume, the places you spend your time, they are all programming your mind. And if you're not intentional about what's influencing you, you'll end up being shaped by default. Look around your life. Who do you spend the most time with? Are they lifting you higher or keeping you small? There's a reason why they say you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Not just in finances or success, but in your mindset, your habits, even your expectations of what's possible. If you're constantly around people who complain, doubt, or settle, their energy is rubbing off on you, whether you like it or not. And if you're around people who think big, take action, and demand more from life, that becomes your standard. But it's not just people, it's everything in your environment, the books you read, the media you consume, the conversations you engage in. If you fill your mind with negativity, with distractions, with things that drain your energy, your thinking will reflect that. But if you consciously surround yourself with knowledge, inspiration, and challenges that force you to grow, you will rise to meet them. The most successful people in the world curate their environment. They don't leave it to chance. They actively seek out mentors, communities, and resources that align with their vision. They understand that their energy is too valuable to waste on negativity, so they protect it. They are ruthless about what they allow into their space, not because they're avoiding reality, but because they know they become whatever they focus on. This is why some people accelerate while others stay stuck. It's not just about talent or intelligence, it's about what they expose themselves to daily. If you take 2 people with the same potential and one spends their time around mediocrity while the other surrounds themselves with excellence, the difference in their outcomes will be night and day. So if you want to reprogram your mind, start by upgrading your environment. Find people who challenge you to think bigger. Immerse yourself in books, podcasts, and ideas that stretch your perspective. Change your physical space. Create a place that energizes and inspires you. And most importantly, cut out the influences that drain you. Because every moment you spend around negativity is a moment you're reinforcing limitations. At the end of the day, you are not just the product of your thoughts. You are the product of what surrounds you. So take control. Be intentional. Design an environment that pulls you toward the life you want rather than one that keeps you trapped in the life you've outgrown. Because if you want to change your mind, sometimes the fastest way isn't to fight against old patterns, it's to put yourself in a place where new patterns are inevitable.